educadora. Lilian Nasserian es educadora, defensora del cambio social y líder comunitaria, y se dedica a defender los derechos de mujeres, niños y grupos marginales. Dirige la Masai Mara Women Empowerment Guide Organization, una organización comunitaria con base en Narok West, Kenia, que busca disminuir la pobreza, favorecer la educación y la conciencia ambiental y dar. Además, Lilian es docente en la Ildunguillo Comprehensive School. Por el trabajo en pos de la salud reproductiva y la igualdad de género, ha recibido reconocimientos nacionales y continentales en África, incluyendo el premio Utumishi Bora por su innovación pionera, y también en 2023 el premio para jóvenes mujeres de África Queen Zinga Badi Award por su tarea destacable para terminar con prácticas como el matrimonio infantil y la mutilación genital. Lilian es también escritora y orientadora en programas de escritura de diarios adolescentes y herramientas que ayuden a una vida completa en los jóvenes. Su liderazgo la convierte en una voz poderosa para el cambio social en Kenia y más allá de sus fronteras también. Como va a compartir enseguida a Guadalupe, Lilian estuvo aquí en la Uncuyo en 2018, así es que, bueno, es una amiga de esta casa. Lilian Nasserian Martin is a passionate educator, social change advocate, and community leader dedicated to advancing the rights and opportunities of women, children, and marginalized groups. She is director of the Maasai Women Empowerment Guide Organization, a community-led initiative in Narok West, Kenya, focused on poverty alleviation, education, environmental conservation, and legal aid. In addition to her community leadership, she teaches at Idungisho Comprehensive School, where she inspires learners through education and mentorship. Her advocacy for sexual and reproductive health rights, child protection, and gender equality has earned her national and continental recognition, including the Utumishi Bora Award for Pioneering Innovation and the Young Women of Africa Queen Zinga Bandi Award for her outstanding work in ending harmful practices such as child marriage and female genital mutilation. She's also a writer and mentor who develops resources such as adolescent journals and life skill programs to guide young people toward holistic growth. And Lilian was here at Uncuyo in 2018, so she's a dear friend of our university. Now Guadalupe will give you some more details on Lilian and her work so that then we can listen to Lilian.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Great. So it is my great pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Lilian Nasserian. Lilian is the driving force behind the Masai Mara Women Empowerment Guide Organization, a community-based initiative committed to nurturing both education and empowerment. What makes her mission so remarkable is how practical and holistic it is. From May up to August, in partnership with World Without Borders, Lilian and her team address some of the most pressing needs that shape a child's capacity to learn and thrive in Narok West County, Kenya. For instance, their school feeding programs ensure that classrooms are not filled with hungry children, but with attentive, energized learners. In some schools where the program was introduced, enrollment jumped dramatically and absenteeism dropped to below 25%. These aren't just statistics. They are real stories of children who now have the strength to see through class, dream bigger, and learn more. But the mission doesn't stop at meals. Lilian's organization also empowers young women through menstrual health education and access to sanitary products, breaking down barriers that often keep girls out of school. On International Menstrual Hygiene Day, for example, 100 women received reusable sanitary commodities, along with training to better understand their cycles. These seemingly simple interventions carry profound consequences. They restore dignity, ensure continuity in education, and open up new futures for girls who might otherwise have been left behind. The organization also invests in sports and mentorship programs, recognizing that education is not only about textbooks. By organizing soccer tournaments, offering career guidance, and even introducing learners to opportunities in the hospitality sector, they broaden horizons and cultivate teamwork, resilience, and aspiration. They also improve learning environment with things as practical and as crucial as tests, so that learners preparing for national exams can do so with dignity and focus. Lilian's commitment to empowerment has also reached beyond the borders of Kenya. Back in 2018, Lilian visited Mendoza, invited by the Universidad Nacional de Cuyo to share her story as part of the cycle Women of the World. There, she spoke powerfully about the struggles of Maasai women, marriage at a young age, gender-based violence, and the barriers to education. And she inspires students and faculty alike with her courage and her vision of change. Her visit wasn't just a cultural exchange, but a reminder of how interconnected our struggles for dignity and equality are, no matter where we come from. If we take a moment to reflect, we see something very important. Lilian's work isn't just about academics, it's about the whole person. Every initiative matters. Meals that give children the energy to learn, menstrual health support that restores dignity and confidence, sports and mentorship that builds resilience and creativity. And just as crucial, her focus on community engagement reminds us that education is never an individual journey. Together, these efforts shape not only better students, but healthier, more connected human beings. This vision resonates deeply with the contemplative thought of Thomas Merton, who reminded us that the real purpose of education is to learn how to live, discovering one's true self, growing in freedom, and cultivating authentic relationships with others in the world. Like Merton, Lilian calls us to recognize education as more than transmission of knowledge. It is a path toward wholeness, empathy, and justice. In her journey, we see the living expression of what Merton described as the dance of life, where dignity, awareness, and responsibility move together in harmony. So as we welcome Lilian and listen to her paper, The Evolving Mission of Education, Preparing Minds for a World in Flux, I invite us to notice how her work is a living reminder that education is not only about preparing students for exams or careers, but about shaping whole persons who can thrive, care, and respond creatively to a world that is, as both she and Merton insist, in constant transformation. Please join me in warmly welcoming Lilian Nasserian.
Thank you so much, Guadalupe Zorrilla. I hope I pronounced your name well, and I'm sorry if I missed some of the sounds. I'm so grateful for this opportunity. Indeed, University of Cuyo has been very inspiring to me. And as a village girl, the first time I boarded a flight to travel outside my country, it's when I traveled to Argentina, Mendoza, and I will never forget that experience. The love and the moments we shared are so dear to me. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share my point of view with you. So I will not take much time introducing myself anymore. And thank you for giving me such a wonderful introduction. I appreciate. I was almost shedding a tear. That was so nice and sweet of you. Thank you so much. Yes, I am not only a teacher, but I am a believer of education. I believe in the power of education. I believe that education can break barriers and education can transform societies. And my story is a testimony of how much education can do to any person. When I was born, my parents did not have plans to take me to school. They believe, as in our society, when a girl is born, her future is already predetermined. Probably they know when you will go through female genital mutilation. They will know the time you will get married, and therefore, me being one of the lucky women, girls who accessed education, tell that education can uplift our society. And if one woman can transform her society, village, and communities through education, you can reflect on how much more education can do if everyone have access to education, in regardless of gender, regardless of social background, in regardless of race or anything. So I have a privilege to share with you my paper on the evolving mission of education. And in every society we serve, in any community we belong to, we should believe that we have an opportunity to educate and an opportunity to be educated. And in this time and season, the 21st century, education doesn't just happen in a classroom. Education happens everywhere. And therefore, as we plan for education, as we plan to get educated, we have to be open-minded and allow ourselves to learn, and to learn from everyone and in any environment that we find ourselves in. So apparently, the world has changed in the 21st century. The education is evolving. We have issues to address, the issues to do with technology, climate, education, and culture. So since technology is evolving so rapidly, climate issues are evolving rapidly, and also culture, then the mission of education must also evolve, prepare learners for uncertainties. So from the past, the traditional mission of education was just knowledge transfer, I believe so, and discipline, and also to prepare learners for careers. And in the modern shift, the mission of education should include creativity and innovation. We have to create environments for learners to be creative and innovative. And also to be critical thinkers. We have to allow them to reason out and provide solutions to the problems that they face according to their society. And also, it has to provide lifelong learning. Whatever anyone should learn in school should not just benefit in a classroom setup. It should build them to be a resilient person, to be a strong person even outside a classroom. So, for instance, apparently matters to do with technology and AI is one of the forces changes, one of the driving forces of change. And this will help, when we introduce this, it will help learners to be prepared and even in the job sector, because apparently I imagine the learners who come from less privileged societies, who cannot be able to access computers, who cannot be able to access internet. It is not just happening in my village, I believe so, but a lot of this is still happening in some of the underprivileged societies. And therefore, as educators or as social developers, we have to come up with strategies to ensure that as education evolves, no child is left behind. Even those children from the village, for instance, the learners from my village, we are so many kilometers away from civilization. And we just have to prepare our lessons in a way that will help this child understand that there is AI and there is technology, and what technology benefits them, how they can benefit from technology, so that they are not left behind when it comes to job seeking. And also matters to do with globalization. We have to train our learners to appreciate different cultures, to appreciate connecting to people from different economies and communities and different races. We have to let them appreciate them, because eventually with internet, the world is becoming a global village, and therefore someone has to learn how to respect others. They have to learn how to communicate in a way that doesn't upset anyone, regardless of where they come from. So the new missions of education that we need to embrace is that we need to prepare learners for adaptability and resilience. They have to learn how to adapt to new changes. Yeah, because currently we might not work entirely in our own villages or in our own countries. At times, opportunities might locate us to different races, to different cultures, to different civilization, and therefore we have to prepare our learners to adaptability and also resilience. And as we have a new generation, like apparently we call them the Generation Z, we have to teach learners how to be resilient, because ideally, for one to live a happy life, it doesn't mean that there is absence of problems. There must be always something that people are going through, and therefore they have to learn to be resilient. They have to learn to be patient. They have to learn to be strong, because we believe that tough times don't last, but tough people last. So tough times will just come and pass. Like, for instance, I normally reflect some years back when I was in school, and the greatest fear I had was being married off. And I was so scared, and I was almost giving in. I was almost allowing myself to go through that culture, but I am so grateful that I was able to wait a little longer to keep pressing on, to seek help from relevant authorities. And now that is now behind me. I'm no longer afraid of being married off. That is now behind me, and here I am, having gone through that, and I'm ready to even face more challenges and overcome them. Also, we have to foster ethical citizenship and empathy. It is very important to have people who appreciate where they come from. They appreciate who they are, and also they are able to express empathy to people around them. Empathy is one of the values that carries along love and care and kindness. Also, equipping learners with 21st century skills. And some of these skills include collaboration and creativity and problem solving. We have to come together like how we are now. We have to bring women together, bring youths together, bring societies together to collaborate and solve the global issues or even the community issues. So the core competencies are the future. Personally, I emphasize on critical thinking and problem solving, digital literacy and media literacy, cultural competencies and sustainability awareness. And the role of the teacher in school is also shifting from just being a lecturer who is just standing in front of a class and oozing knowledge to the learners to a mentor, someone who can mentor the learners and also a facilitator. And schools also shift from just a structure where learners go to access knowledge into, it has to shift and become an innovation hub. School has to shift and become an innovation hub. And by doing this, I believe that we will be able to achieve the core values and the mission of education. And as I wind up, I would like to highlight, I know Guadalupe has already shared what I'm doing, and I just want to reiterate that it takes a lot of collaboration for me to be able to provide the schooling program. I have to connect with friends, I have to connect with colleagues and people from different levels in the society. And therefore, for us to implement all these, it takes a lot of courage and collaboration and also mutual understanding. And for anyone who is interested in joining my work, you're welcome. And Marcela will share the details on, or maybe you can connect to Marcela. We are open to partnerships. We are open to friends. We need more friends who support our programs. And also, yeah, we need people who will be there to give us so much love and cheer on what we do. It will take us a long way. Thank you so much for your time. I believe maybe in the next conference we will do it in person because it will give us a good opportunity to share ideas and to understand each other and how we can work together in building healthy societies. Thank you so much, and to you, Guadalupe.
Thank you, Lilian. And well, thank you, Guadalupe, for introducing Lilian. I don't know if there are questions or comments that you would like to share with Lilian.
I wanted to share just a link. You were talking about culture to raise cultural awareness, and I while I was doing a workshop, I was introduced to a cultural atlas about countries, religions, a glossary. So it's an educational tool. So you can use it to work with students and to raise awareness, for example, the do's and the don'ts. And it's a really cool tool. I don't know if you have heard of it.
Pardon, you're saying you have a link that helps learners to learn about culture, different cultures?
Yes, and there in the chat, I don't know if you can see.
Okay, thank you for sharing. I will go through it and see how it will actually also help me. I've got it.
Yes, it's cool too, because when if you want to teach on a specific cultural or or if you want students to go about the web page, you can have them, or I don't know, retrieve information from that source.
Thank you.
Estela.
Yes, Fernando.
Lilian, I would like to thank you very much for all your work and for your presentation. As a former teacher educator, I find it really, really inspiring, and I think it gives us plenty of reasons for hope. The fact that you're doing what you're doing in connection with so many other people, just to bring together your interest in education, which I really share and I do appreciate, just to bring together this with the topic of this gathering on Thomas Merton. You may perhaps know it, but in case if this is not so, I would like to suggest one book which precisely links Thomas Merton and the education of the whole person. It was written many years ago, but I still find it very, very inspiring. And it frames what many of the things you're saying in connection with the figure of Thomas Merton. Thomas Merton and the Education of the Whole Person by Thomas Del Prete. I will write it on the chat so that you may perhaps take note of that if you don't know it already. Okay, but I would like, most of all, thank you very much for everything you're doing. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you. You're welcome, and I appreciate. I've been reading about Thomas Merton online, and I would also appreciate to read the book. Thank you for the recommendation.
Thank you, Lilian, for your presentation. I was intrigued by what you said, that you got support from relevant authorities. So my question would be, who were your mentors? You once were a student, now you're a teacher. Who inspired you? Who empowered you? Can you say a little bit more about your network when you were a student?
Thank you so much for that. That is very important. And the reason why I'm a passionate mentor, it's because I lacked mentorship when I was a student. And I had to go through a lot to figure out where I'm supposed to be and what I'm supposed to do. So that is one of the things that have made me to passionately take education beyond classroom and ensure there is mentorship and support for learners. However, as I proceeded with my education to higher levels, I got to connect to people through reading stories of successful women and what they were able to do when they were young, and that has actually shaped me. And I also acknowledge the people who just gave me the most important thing I needed when I was in school. And it seems very petty or very insignificant, but it is one of the things that made me struggle a lot in school, and that is the sanitary commodities. So there are people who could support me with that, and it took me a long way because it provided me comfort. And I already shared with Marcel that I'm working on a journal to help young people reflect on who they are, understand themselves, and develop on being well holistically. And after completing my university, I was able to attend a mentorship session for the first time. And one of the things that was taught to me to do was journaling. So that has been my journey. Not smooth, but I made it. However, it is my responsibility, and I feel like I owe it to the universe to give it back and make sure all girls around me don't have to struggle to figure out who they are and what to do and where they should be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul, you had a raised hand.
I just wanted to say to Lilian, thank you for the reminder that education goes beyond the books and the institution. I think with a lot of what is going on in North America at the moment, the United States in particular, with the defunding of institutions and that sort of thing, that we start to focus on that and to remind us that it includes breakfast and soccer in terms of the health of the whole person and the development of teamwork and community are really important things. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you. You're welcome, and thank you for the good compliment.
Okay, Lilian, yes, Liana. Sorry, I didn't see your raised hand. So, Liana.
How we're doing on time. If we have time, I would like to add a little story that I happen to be part of, connected to Kenya, but I don't know how we're doing on time. So, Marcela, you'll have to tell me.
Don't worry about the time and just go ahead, Liana, please.
Okay, so my children are now, they have just finished university. I have twins and then another one who's almost 30. And through their church youth group, they met a very wonderful priest who is about their age and who is a missionary in Kenya and in the northern part of Kenya. And he translated a book in Romanian from English, speaking about the history of the diocese that he's part of. And we made a little booklet and then another booklet. And then he came to back to Romania for the summer holidays. And he took the booklets to various parishes and he sold them. And with the money he got, he said he was able to build a classroom, to add a classroom to one of the schools in the villages where he is. And so I got to know Kenya a little bit from, up close, so to say, through him. And I can connect a lot, but certainly not completely to what Lilian is saying. And I can understand the huge effort that she had to go through. And I'm very happy that I could hear her speech.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And the northern and southern part of Kenya is one of the marginalized parts of the country. And thank you for sharing. Thank you for listening.
And then one more thing, if you have a website, could you put that in the chat for us so we're able to sort of keep up on what you're doing?
Thank you. Our website is down at the moment. We are available on other social media platforms, and I will share the links to our social media platforms. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would also like to share that Marcela indicated that it would be good to invite you to our symposium that we will organize next year from the 14th until the 17th of May in Germany. So also from my part, and also Christobel is here, and Marcela and myself, the three of us are organizing a symposium. So you can in Germany at that time, and the topic will be interfaith dialogue, education, and what was the third? So
And ecology.
And ecology, I'm sorry. So it would be great to have you there. So you can contact Marcela about it to get more information. And we would support you and make it happen if you're interested.
Thank you so much. That is exciting news to hear, and I'm interested, and I'll be honored to participate and meet all of you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any more comments, questions, messages for Lilian? Yes, Cristina. Your microphone is off, Cristina, I think. We cannot hear you. No. Or maybe if you cannot turn it on, write the message in the chat, Cristina. Okay. Well, while Cristina writes, I want to thank you, Lilian, for having joined this gathering. This is the second time that Lilian participates in the Argentine Thomas Merton Conference. And well, we are very thankful for what you have told us, for your witness and your hard work and your commitment to education, really. And I think it's really interesting that, and that's why I'm so thankful, because there are so many things that we take for granted, even in what we think is a difficult Argentine context. There are things that we just think are everyday things. We take them for granted, and so listening to you speaking from a different context is really enlightening to all of us. So thanks for sharing that. And yeah, I see now that you have shared the link to the Facebook group, the social media, so you can all see it there and start following Lilian.
Thank you so much for inviting. It was such a great honor to participate, and enjoy your morning. It's evening here, and we appreciate the time zone. So maybe I'll listen in as you talk, if that is okay.
Yes, sure, Lilian. Yes, and thanks a lot. Thanks for being here and for being part of this conference. And hopefully we'll meet face-to-face next year. Then we'll keep in touch about what Dominic has just told you about the conference next year.
Muchas gracias.
De nada. Ok, vamos entonces a pasar al próximo expositor. We'll go on to our next speaker. Juan Carlos will present in Spanish, so I'll write the translation into English in the chat. First, I'll introduce him. Let me just share why I read the presentations of each speaker both in Spanish and English. It's because the procedures of this conference will be available at our college's YouTube channel, maybe 2 or 3 days from now. And so people who access the channel maybe don't know English, and they, by having this presentation both in English and in Spanish, they will know who are speaking, and then they can use some sort of automatic translator, depending on the language that is used for the different papers. Juan Carlos Ramos Hendez es editor, docente e investigador independiente con estudios en fotografía y filosofía, profesional en diseño gráfico, especializado en diseño multimedia. Cursó la maestría en estudios literarios en la UBA, la Universidad de Buenos Aires, y ha desarrollado investigaciones sobre problemas de la crítica literaria con énfasis en los vínculos entre literatura, religión y artes visuales. Juan Carlos Ramos Hendez is a professor, editor, and independent researcher with an interest in photography and philosophy. He holds a degree in graphic design, specializing in multimedia design. He attended the MA program in literary studies at Universidad de Buenos Aires in Argentina, and he has done research on literary criticism with an emphasis on the links among literature, religion, and the visual arts. His paper is called Poetics of the End, Anatomic Eschatology in Nicholas Greihalter and Thomas Merton, Film Essay and Literary Essay. Bueno, bienvenido Juan Carlos.
Hola a todos, hola querida Marcela. Yo quisiera presentar una pequeña presentación que tengo, si me das acceso, pero no puedo.
Ok, ya le pido ayuda a Gabriel.
Listo, ya me la dio el acceso. Gracias. Entonces ahí me pueden decir si ven.
Sí,
¿Ven ahora?
sí,
Sí.
perfecto.
Bueno, buenos días, buenas tardes, buenas noches. Este saludo a lo Truman Show, dado el carácter mundial de esta conexión, porque sé que nos escuchan desde la Patagonia hasta Corea y nos vemos. A la Universidad Pública Nacional de Cuyo, especialmente a la profesora Marcela Rayo, quiero agradecerles por este espacio y por la oportunidad de poder compartir con ustedes esta presentación. Lo que traigo hoy es la comunicación de un paper que se titula Poéticas del Fin, una escatología atómica de Nicolás Ghel y Thomas Merton, fil ensayo literario. Este estudio se suma a la investigación que desarrollé para mi tesis de maestría titulada Thomas Merton, de Sura, Cristianismo y Revolución, tránsitos, polémicas, debates y apropiaciones de la crítica en las revistas literarias argentinas desde los vínculos entre literatura y religión. Argentina, y esto lo digo con un profundo agradecimiento, fue uno de los países que más editó a Merton, a través de la editorial sudamericana principalmente, fundada por Victoria Ocampo, de quien se hablará ahora en la tarde en estas jornadas, donde incluso se planteó el primer proyecto de obras completas de Merton, que comprendía 2 volúmenes, del cual solo vio la imprenta 1. Y esta red de colaboraciones que tuvo a nivel mundial Merton en las revistas literarias, especialmente en las latinoamericanas, es un proyecto de investigación que continúa siendo una zona vacante dentro de los estudios mertonianos. Me interesa mucho el link que nos compartió Guadalupe, me imaginaría una página así de los trabajos de Merton y colaboraciones a nivel mundial. El paper en mención proponía que una lectura a partir de materiales artísticos que denominamos poéticas del fin, desde donde pensaremos, mediados por la mirada, la imagen y el sonido en el caso del film y la palabra a través de los textos de Merton, problemáticas aún latentes en nuestra subjetividad con relación a un inminente desastre nuclear. Dado el tiempo corto, me centraré más en la escritura de Merton y su poética que en el film, pero pueden consultar el artículo completo en la revista Chasqui del CIESPAL, el centro de estudios fundado por la UNESCO. La escritura de Merton y su figura de autor se construyen en un cronotopo donde convergen la creencia y el acontecimiento histórico, marcado por la revolución y el cambio de época, en donde lo político está pensado desde una comprensión creativa de la crítica social, en una visión cuya singularidad radica en una prophetic intuition, que Merton dice que subsiste en el auténtico poeta cristiano o no cristiano, y que es en algún grado un contemplativo. Merton percibe la dimensión espiritual interior de los acontecimientos y objetos ordinarios, rechazando una concepción incorpórea y espiritualizada en una poética religiosa del modelo pío separada de lo mundano. Esta forma de abordar lo religioso en Merton desde la naturaleza de las cosas, evocando una dimensión espiritual que subsiste en ellas, y su práctica desde la experiencia cristiana constituye la novedad y singularidad de su escritura, una modulación que llamamos poética profética. Merton, cuestionándose desde la radicalidad de la vida monástica por los problemas políticos, sociales y literarios, aún consciente de equívocos y de los límites de su condición de vida para una indagación más rigurosa, también lo era de las ventajas que le ofrecía aquella vida para su labor literaria, una visión contemplativa. Quiero señalar ahora algunas cuestiones prioritarias para Merton dentro de su proyecto literario, a los que dedicó sus últimos años de vida, abordando la dimensión religiosa en la literatura y compilados en los ensayos literarios de Thomas Merton, publicados en 1981. Nos interesa su forma de afrontar las cuestiones problemáticas y urgentes dada la tensión de la Guerra Fría respecto a la función social de la literatura, y lo expresó en consonancia con algunas figuras contemporáneas. En su carta a su director y amigo James Laughlin, Merton recuerda un acuerdo al que había llegado con Jacques Maritain. Dice, abro comillas, Jacques Maritain y yo coincidimos en que quizá la forma más viva de abordar los problemas teológicos y filosóficos actuales, dado el caos en el que se encuentra la teología y la filosofía, sería mediante la escritura creativa y la crítica literaria. Me interesó proponer este tema en estas jornadas dada la vigencia de pensar nuestro tiempo con un horizonte de paz en tiempos de oscuridad, como se titula el testamento profético de Thomas Merton sobre la guerra y la paz, que empezó a tener lectores gracias a los repetidos envíos por correo postal de Merton, muchas veces en forma de copia mimeografada de versiones provisionales de sus textos, que modificaba en ocasiones a causa de la censura en su monasterio, pero que distribuía entre sus amigos en una versión prohibida, como sucedió con Peace in the Post-Christian Era de 1962, que circuló primero de mano en mano, pues se publicó en una edición póstuma hasta el año 2004, 40 años después, y en 2006 fue traducida al español. La situación actual nos recuerda constantemente que la carrera armamentista no es un asunto del pasado ni una página cerrada de la Guerra Fría. Hoy asistimos a un nuevo ciclo de tensiones nucleares que atraviesan distintas geografías. Estas tensiones no solo son datos de política internacional, son sobre todo el recordatorio de que la humanidad sigue habitando una frágil frontera entre la vida y su aniquilación técnica. Esta fragilidad aparece ya en la cita del epígrafe de este paper. El cineasta alemán Werner Herzog, a quien le fascina la idea de que nuestra civilización sea como una fina capa de hielo sobre un profundo océano de caos y oscuridad. La amenaza nuclear no solo redefine estrategias militares, sino también imaginarios colectivos, temores culturales, narrativas sobre el futuro. Hablar de cine y literatura en este contexto no es un lujo intelectual, sino una manera de hacernos cargo del presente. Son precisamente este tipo de representaciones, junto a la cuestión del montaje cinematográfico, fundamento teórico del cine conceptual, y la mirada contemplativa, desde donde operamos nuestro corpus conformado por el film ensayo Homo sapiens y las poesías de Thomas Merton en Incursiones en lo Indecible, de 1967. Palabras e imágenes que posibilitan un instante de diálogo reflexivo con el espectador y atraviesan otros diversos materiales que analizamos en el paper, desde Schiller, Dostoyevsky, Simmel, Virginia Woolf, Bresson hasta Tarkovsky, que proponemos en perspectiva desde el vínculo de las artes visuales y la representación literaria, enmarcados en este periodo de crisis nuclear. En este marco quiero situar una experiencia sobre las condiciones de producción de mi propia escritura del paper y la obra que me convoca hoy. Me refiero a la cinta Homo Sapiens, película que tuve la ocasión de ver en el Bafisi, en el Festival Internacional de Cine de Buenos Aires. Fue allí, en ese contexto de un festival que arriesga con propuestas radicales, donde comprobé que se trataba de una película que exigía a la audiencia algo más que atención, pedía resistencia. Tal vez lo que exige de ustedes también esta ponencia. Resistencia, aguante, dirían los argentinos, a los planos estáticos de más de 2 minutos, resistencia a los silencios prolongados y al sonido ambiente que parecerían al borde de fracturar el tiempo en la sala. Poco a poco, de entre los 50 y 60 espectadores que asistían a la proyección, conté 31 que dejaron la sala. Una película densa que pedía a los espectadores dispuestos a soportar no solo la duración, sino el peso de una experiencia estética incómoda. Thomas Merton, desde su escritura, nos propone también un modo de entender a lo incómodo. Su crítica a la modernidad técnica, a la sociedad de consumo, a la lógica de la guerra, se acerca al gesto cinematográfico de Gail Tarker: detenernos, contemplar y dejar que el silencio hable. Quiero destacar una de las formas en que Thomas Merton construye su ensayística, y es como la del jesuita Leonardo Castellani en la Argentina, quien desarrolla una crítica capaz de intervenir polémicamente, aún el riesgo de equivocarse en su presente y de imaginar formas posibles, transfiguraciones, resurrecciones de lo comunitario. Esto parece intuirlo Merton, y así lo plantea Ernesto Cardenal en una de sus cartas. Dice Merton: una vida contemplativa sencilla, sin hábito, sin regla, sin las anacrónicas estructuras de las órdenes monásticas. Cierro cita. Adelantado al Concilio Vaticano II, hablaba de una reforma trapense para América Latina. Posteriormente hablaba de aquella fundación nueva, fuera de la orden, que haría realidad cardenal en 1965 en el monasterio laico de Nuestra Señora de Solentiname, en Nicaragua. Este rasgo fundamental nos permite situar a Merton en el lugar del parresiasta, es decir, aquel que habla desde el borde del margen institucional, asumiendo el riesgo de decir lo que otros callan. Como señala Foucault, el parresiasta es quien decide decir aquello que los poderes constituidos no están dispuestos a escuchar. Bueno, y ya sabemos por las fotografías que vimos ayer, tomadas por un monje, cómo terminan los parresiastas, atropellados por ventiladores. Ahora quisiera pensar desde el paisaje y la imagen, lo artificial y lo natural. Cuando vemos una arquitectura en ruinas, abandonada, corroída por la quiebra económica o la catástrofe nuclear, nos encontramos con algo sorprendente. Estas estructuras invadidas por la lluvia, cubiertas de plantas que crecen sobre sus muros, habitadas por aves que hacen nido en sus columnas, hoy parecen más vivas que nunca, aunque ya resulten inhabitables para el ser humano por su condición radioactiva. Aún en su ausencia siguen conservando un eco de lo social. Sin embargo, seguimos pensando estos espacios desde una lógica antropocéntrica. Seguimos atrapados en una dialéctica que jerarquiza lo viviente, como si todo tuviera que ordenarse en escalas: geósfera, biosfera, noósfera, bajo la idea de un progreso lineal. Ese progreso que en las últimas décadas ha acelerado su marcha exponencialmente y se ha convertido en el negocio más extremo de la humanidad, el negocio de su propia autodestrucción. Es aquí donde aparece un problema, una sociedad que incluso controla la forma que pensamos estos objetos decadentes y al mismo tiempo florecientes. Los reducimos a catástrofes impensables, los patologizamos como locura, los apartamos del intelecto, como si no tuvieran nada que decirnos. Pero, y esto es importante, si queremos comprender la violencia totalitaria de una sociedad, quizá la psicología sea más útil que el análisis político, dice Agamben. Alain Badiou parte de esta intuición y se pregunta: ¿qué pensó el siglo XX antes que parecía impensable? Su ejemplo es contundente. Dice Badiou: cuando decimos con ligereza que el exterminio nazi fue impensable o inabordable, olvidamos algo capital. Fue pensado, abordado y ejecutado con todo el cuidado y la determinación posibles. Fin de cita. En esta línea metodológica se inscribe nuestra propuesta: observar a través de lo que llamamos poéticas del fin los problemas aún latentes en nuestra subjetividad frente a un inminente desastre nuclear. Pensemos en el cambio climático, en las fugas del material radioactivo en plantas nucleares, en la tensión creciente de la carrera armamentista. Todo esto proviene de la inteligencia del siglo XX y se consideramos el oxímoron de un principio y un final entrelazados en el átomo, la indivisible partícula de la naturaleza en la que todo se crea y por la que todo se desmorona de manera cíclica en una reacción en cadena. Este evento atómico fue narrado como el relámpago silencioso del que habla John Hersey en su crónica sobre Hiroshima, Nightly's Flash, periodístico donde la pensada como imagen. Y son justamente junto con los silencios y la mirada contemplativa las que operan en nuestro corpus. Obras que, como señala, apelan no solo al ojo, sino también al oído, porque para el espectador, dice Bresson, el oído es mucho más creador que el ojo. Y aquí quiero recordar un dato alarmante. Según el Domesday Clock del Boletín de Científicos Atómicos, cuando escribió el artículo en 2017 estamos a 2 minutos y medio de la medianoche, es decir, del fin del mundo, 2 minutos y medio. Ahora, ayer se consultó, estamos a 89 segundos de la medianoche, aunque no olvidemos que en algunos lugares ya el paisaje es de una tiniebla de madrugada. Frente a este panorama, las imágenes de con lo que George Simmel llama la conexión infinita de las cosas, el fluir continuo de la existencia temporal y espacial, esa corriente global que se manifiesta tanto en el encuadre de la cámara como en un poema fragmentario y que converge en lo que denominamos paisaje. Estas poéticas del fin nos ofrecen una declaración, hay cosas que deben pensarse y el arte nos abre un camino para ello. No se trata de instrumentalizar la lírica como un objeto sociológico, como advierte Adorno en su discurso sobre la lírica y sociedad, sino en entrar más profundamente en la obra de arte para comprender su referencia social. Nuestra hipótesis es que los objetos representados en el corpus viven una transfiguración simbólica en la mirada del espectador. Unos están vedados por la radioactividad, otros existen solo en la visión del poeta, y sin embargo se convierten en imágenes de mundo, accesibles solo a través de lo humano que las percibe o las narra. En este proceso, Merton nos recuerda algo crucial en su mensaje a los poetas enviado a Miguel Grinberg para que lo leyeran aquel primer encuentro de poetas realizado en Ciudad de México en 1964 y al que Merton le fue revocado el permiso de asistir por el abad. Dice Merton, cito, el motivo de un poema es un acto vivo que solo adquiere realidad en el acto mismo de escribirlo. Fin de la cita. Hacia el final de este mensaje, cuando resiste a la expulsión de los poetas por los platones tecnológicos, usa la metáfora de sumergirnos de nuevo en el río heraclitiano, para que la poesía siga naciendo en esas aguas móviles que no se repiten, dice Merton. En ese instante impar, la verdad se nos hace manifiesta a todos los que son capaces de recibirla. Fin de cita. Este chapuzón en la verdad es en Homo sapiens una invitación a habitar lo deshabitado, incluso por el sentido, cuando acontezca la ausencia del humano. Mientras para Merton será la dislocación del punto de vista que permite no una visión excéntrica, sino sumergida, en la que se hace visible su presencia. De manera semejante, Merton en La lluvia y el rinoceronte, escrito en su soledad campestre allá en su eremita, describe cómo se sumerge en ese paisaje y dice, cito, a los árboles los conozco, a la noche la conozco, a la lluvia la conozco. Cierro los ojos y al momento me hundo en todo el mundo de lluvia de que soy parte, y el mundo sigue adelante conmigo adentro, pues no soy un extraño en él. Fin de cita. Esa es la mirada contemplativa que comparte con Homo sapiens, una invitación a habitar lo deshabitado, a pensar incluso desde la ausencia del ser humano. Es en medio de aquel paisaje que Merton aprendió otra vez a dormir. Y no resulta un detalle menor, pues se plantea aquí una posibilidad desde la mirada contemplativa de pensar aquella paradoja occidental entre la vigilia y el sueño, tema que disparó la modernidad con Descartes, la investigación psicoanalítica con Freud y parte de la poética literaria más representativa del siglo XX, desde Kafka y Joyce hasta nuestro querido Borges, a quien a propósito debería venerarse un poco más acá en Ginebra, donde me encuentro, y donde se encuentra su tumba que pasa desapercibida para muchos. Finalmente, prosigamos ahora con lo que hemos llamado la anatomía de la catástrofe, los objetos que también son sujetos. En Homo sapiens vemos planos generales, fijos, escenas de medio minuto con un diseño sonoro minucioso, que incluso fue premiado. Se trata de ruinas que ahora se nos presentan como paisajes. Allí la naturaleza se manifiesta con toda su potencia temporal, cubriéndolo todo con un lecho verde, borrando todo rastro humano. Geihalter construye así una ciudad donde ya no existe distinción entre lo público y lo privado. Una lógica biológica interviene en los materiales artificiales, el hormigón y el acero, en un tiempo presente. Son imágenes mediadas por la pantalla cinemática del teatro o el cine en una proporción de 21:9, gigante, y un sonido envolvente, que a otro modo serían inaccesibles sin pasar por la experiencia de la decadencia humana, dado el efecto reactivo de las catástrofes en las plantas nucleares, que para el espectador resultaría artificial. Solo pueden ser vistas en el cine de forma remota, virtual, como esta charla y esta mediación del Zoom a la que esta pandemia nos acostumbró. Estos espacios son habitados ahora por la progenie de la naturaleza en la forma de todo un universo en expansión, hechos posibles de ser pensados por el uso de la potencia atómica nuclear desarrollada, paradójicamente, en un estado de cordura. Pues como señala Merton en Incursiones en lo Invisible, abro comillas, los que han inventado y perfeccionado las bombas atómicas y los proyectiles intercontinentales, los que han planificado la estrategia de la próxima guerra, los que han valorado las diferentes posibilidades de usar agentes bacterianos y químicos, no son los locos, sino los cuerdos. Cierro comillas. En este sentido, los materiales del corpus revelan un valor artístico particular, su carácter fragmentario. Se construye narrativamente desde el contraste entre decadencia e inhabitabilidad, por un lado, y esplendor y proliferación de la naturaleza por el otro. Es un goce estético que es generado a partir de la catástrofe, el final, y lo primitivo, el inicio. Como aquella lluvia del campo que describe Merton desde su cabaña de eremita, que no es como la de las ciudades, que llena los bosques con un río inmenso y confuso, cito. Y la escucho, porque me recuerda una y otra vez que el mundo entero corre con ritmos que todavía no he aprendido a reconocer, ritmos que no son los de los ingenieros. Fin de la cita. Aquí cabe recordar la pregunta de Alan Weisman en El mundo sin nosotros, del año 2014. Inspira la parte final del fin de Hegel, quien proponía borrarnos y ver lo que queda. El autor se pregunta cómo respondería el resto de la naturaleza si de repente se viera librada de la constante presión que ejercemos sobre ella y sobre los demás organismos. ¿Podría el clima volver a ser como era antes de que encendiéramos todos nuestros motores? Para terminar, llamamos una presencia ausente del ser humano en el planeta, que podemos relacionar con las variaciones que permiten en términos teológicos de descenso y ascenso, de catabasis y anabasis, como en la liturgia bautismal. Es decir, sueño y vigilia, el descenso al infierno y la posterior salida o resurrección. Este movimiento que subyace en aquel himno primitivo cristiano, la carta a los Filipenses del capítulo 2, quiere a Cristo, que Cristo, siendo de condición divina, no retuvo ávidamente el ser igual a Dios, sino que se despojó de sí mismo, tomando condición de siervo. Un texto que prefigura la ausencia producida por la muerte de Dios en la tradición cristiana. Una muerte que después fue secularizada y llevada al terreno filosófico hasta convertirse en una de las matrices de la cultura contemporánea. El pensamiento parricida del siglo XX ha proclamado desde la lectura heideggeriana de Nietzsche un nihilismo que es la lógica interna de la historia occidental. Después del Dios ha muerto, se ha posesionado a una raza de hombre que está no solo en la cima del poder sobre la naturaleza, sino incluso en un poder de exterminio de hombres y mujeres de todas las épocas que hacen posible pensar en un tiempo poshumano. Sin embargo, nuestras narrativas siempre estarán habitadas por los espectros de aquellos genocidios. El Tarque lo explica cuando dice que Homo sapiens es un film que retrata con enorme fuerza este momento. Al estar los seres humanos tan radicalmente ausentes en el film, se hace todavía más presentes. En ese sentido es una película sobre la gente, aunque no estén allí. Fin de la cita. En conclusión, vivimos en un tiempo en el que la amenaza de la destrucción total ha vuelto a instalarse en nuestro horizonte cotidiano. Escenas con misiles volando por ciudades abarrotadas de gente son muestra de cómo una muerte inminente ahora es televisada en tiempo real, incluso es escrita en tiempo real, como las últimas palabras posteadas del poeta, cuentista y novelista gazatí Iba Abunada, publicadas en Facebook desde el sur de la Franja de Gaza y que seguro compartió con sus pequeños hijos antes del bombardeo. Dice el poeta, abro comillas, nosotros, ahí arriba, estamos construyendo una ciudad nueva donde los médicos no tienen pacientes ni detienen la sangre, donde los maestros no sufren del hacinamiento ni gritan a sus alumnos. Hay familias sin dolor y sin tristeza, y periodistas que transmiten el paraíso. Hay poetas que escriben sobre el amor eterno. Todos son de Gaza, todos. En el paraíso se está formando la nueva Gaza que existe sin ningún bloqueo. Fin de cita. Expresiones como esta que seguramente llamarían la atención de Merton, que se interesaba por los poetas emergentes, más aún si emergen en medio de semejante vacuidad y sinsentido, se relacionan con algo que hemos denominado una escatología atómica, poéticas del fin, que hace referencia al oxímoron de un final causado por la catástrofe y un principio de naturaleza rusoniano, que puede ser una esperanza de comenzar lo nuevo, pero también puede ser la capacidad de volver a la catástrofe si continuamos sin pensar lo impensable. ¿Cuál será nuestro legado? A este respecto termino con una de las hipótesis que manejaba el investigador de locaciones del film Homo Sapiens, Simon Graf, mientras buscaba lugares para la filmación, y espero nos sirva ahora. Simón pensaba en estos lugares como si fueran a ser descubiertos por una forma de vida extraterrestre que viniera a la Tierra, y se preguntaba, ¿qué le dirían estos lugares a estos visitantes si carecen del contexto? ¿Y qué dicen sobre nuestra especie? Podría ser, por ejemplo, que éramos seres que luchamos contra nosotros mismos, que oprimimos a otros seres vivos o que hemos vivido una vida donde desperdiciamos muchos recursos. Repito, ¿cuál será nuestro legado? Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Juan Carlos, y perdón porque me di cuenta que había dejado el micrófono encendido
No, no hay nada.
y se
Todo bien.
escuchaba el tecleo. I'm
No
sorry
se
because I
escuchaba nada.
realized that my microphone was on, so you must have heard my typing all along. Okay, if you have any questions or comments. The presentation was in Spanish, but you may ask in English if you wish.
Si preguntas, sí me gustaría que tradujeras.
Two things. One, the name of the movie that you saw. I can't find it in the chat, so I'd like to know the name of the
No,
movie.
sí, Homo
That was
sapiens.
at the Buenos Aires Festival.
Yes, the movie is Homo Sapiens,
Sí.
and it was shown at Buenos Aires, el Bafisi, which is an international film festival carried out in Buenos Aires around April every year.
Okay, good, thank you. The other thing too is that some of the, in a different way, because we had some images of human presence imposed on a landscape, but no visible humans. Very intriguing. It reminded me a little bit of the photography of a Canadian, Bertinsky is the name. And Bertinsky photographs landscapes in a way that from a distance, it looks like you're looking at a thing of beauty. And as you come in really, really close, you're looking at piles of human garbage and refuse. And it has that same sort of tension in it, that the human presence on the one hand can be creative and on the other hand so destructive. some of the photographs reminded me of his work anyway, and he's worthwhile looking up.
Ok, Juan Carlos, Paul dice que le hace acordar a la
Ah, sí,
obra.
no, no, eso lo entendí.
Ok,
Sí, está muy buena la referencia. Porque precisamente es eso, es el punto de vista desde donde nos planteamos la mirada y haciendo la analogía un poco con lo que decía Paul, vale la pena siempre acercarnos para ver la realidad, ¿no? Pero hay cosas a las que no podemos acceder. En la película los planos que grabaron muchos fueron con cámaras, con drones, dado que hay un límite en las zonas de daño nuclear que tú puedes acceder sin tener alguna contaminación. Pero lo lindo es que los osos, los pajaritos, todos lo habitan sin problema, ¿no? Solo nosotros que tenemos esa barrera que nosotros mismos hemos creado por el derrame atómico.
okay, Paul, what Juan Carlos has answered is that he likes this reference you have made to the Canadian photographer, and he stresses how it all depends on the perspective or on the distance from which you watch. And just as in this movie, many of the shots were taken from or using drones because human beings cannot get closer to the places because they would be contaminated by
Radiation.
yeah, that's right. But on the other hand, birds, animals can get closer. They are not prevented to get closer as we human beings are by the same barriers we ourselves have created.
Thank you. I put Bertinsky's website in the chat.
Thank you, Paul.
Good.
Cristóbal.
Hola, buenas. Juan, ¿me puede escuchar?
Sí, perfecto.
Ah, estupendo. Enhorabuena, ha sido una presentación iluminadora, y inspiradora
Excelente.
y profética.
Ok.
Hoy precisamente leí algo sobre la cantautora, en este caso Joan Baez, y había firmado, creo que con otros artistas, un llamado precisamente al tema de la guerra nuclear. Cuando dijiste que estamos a menos de un minuto del mediodía, o sea, ¿cuál es la evidencia, cuál es la situación actual y alarmista y apocalíptica en la que vivimos, donde estamos a un paso de la destrucción masiva? En este caso, ¿qué es lo que tú has encontrado en tu propia investigación?
Ah, bueno, ese es un estudio que hacen los científicos atómicos de este estudio del reloj de la medianoche, que se basan en varios parámetros específicamente, no solo científicos, sino políticos. Recuerdo un pie de página que puse precisamente esta en el texto, donde una de las cosas que ellos dirían que podría acelerar el proceso sería la llegada de Trump al poder en su primer mandato, ¿sí? Y pues de alguna manera es como algo que estamos viendo ahorita como irónico, ¿no? Porque realmente los procesos de paz están cargados en este momento en la Casa Blanca y este peligro inminente resultaría un pacificador en cierto sentido, en este punto. Entonces tal vez aceleró en ese momento esos movimientos políticos inesperados. Ahí sí son poco proféticos porque todos pensaban que Trump en ese primer mandato iba a causar precisamente la guerra y pues la guerra se recrudeció precisamente fue cuando él estaba fuera del poder. Pero realmente ellos lo que tienen en cuenta es precisamente la cantidad de armamento que se está produciendo, ¿sí? También tienen esas medidas allá y hacen como ese cálculo que yo creo que tienen algo de esperanza para no ser paranoicos ni meternos en un clima bastante, o sea, a uno eso lo angustia, uno puede morir de angustia por eso. Sí, nosotros que estamos en una ciudad calmada, central, como nos vemos en nuestras casas, entrando el viento por la ventana, todos tranquilos, Cuando empezó la crisis de Irán, ahorita los bombardeos, estuvimos a muy poco de que se desatara una guerra nuclear, ¿no? Solo Dios sabe y estos genios que manejan el poder, que son no sabemos mucho realmente, así investiguemos lo que está por allá y se habla por debajo de la mesa, solo lo saben ellos. Eh, Seguramente a mí personalmente me impregnó. Yo estaba acá en Europa en ese momento y yo decía, estaba con mi hijo y yo decía, ¿qué hacemos? Yo preferiría estar en Argentina, literalmente, que eran de los sitios que recomendaban para estar en caso de un ataque nuclear. Entonces, uno piensa eso, llegar a pensar eso, créeme que a uno lo toca. Hay otras guerras que están pasando, desgracias, en este mismo instante, bombardeos, y no los estamos viendo. Pero este tipo de estudios hay que pararle, a ponerle atención. O sea, que agradezco mucho tu pregunta.
Yes, Hugh. Your microphone is off. We cannot hear you. No.
There you go. How's that?
Okay, now it's okay. Yes.
Thank you. Well, anyway, also thank you, Marcela, for typing everything on the side. That's very helpful for me because my Spanish isn't that good. But the pictures reminded me of a couple of things. One was there was a painter named George Caitland, spelled Caitlin, and he painted Native Americans before the European settlers went west. And I grew up in Minnesota, in northern part of the country, and he painted these pictures of the Mississippi River Valley. And they're striking to me because if you go there now, you see roads and boats and ridges, but in the paintings, nothing's there except the landscape because there's no sign of any human activity. And they're really interesting to me to look at those pictures. He also drew a lot of pictures of the Native Americans. He was famous for that. But then the pictures, I think some of your pictures were of Gaza. Am I right? I think they were anywhere.
The last one.
Yeah, I just when I was a child, the idea of a nuclear war was very real, and everybody was afraid of it. And Merton was warning people about this danger. And today it seems, and I'm living in America, it seems like no one really even talks about it or thinks about it. Do you think who do you think, I guess, rather, who is the leading voice today that is telling us about the danger that they're living under? Do you have a person that you think is the leading voice for peace and nonviolence?
Que si creo que hay alguna persona ahorita que lidere ese llamamiento. Yo siento ahorita con mucha tristeza que extraño el Papa Francisco. Lo extraño bastante porque realmente era una voz persistente que no se cansaba de repetir que la guerra no conducía a nada y menos la nuclear, ¿sí? Que era un absurdo. Hay un filósofo, Enrique Dussel, que es mendocino, ¿no? Es de la universidad. Bueno, yo lo quiero mucho a Enrique, falleció. Pero él decía una cosa, a él no le preocupaba la guerra nuclear porque sabía que ese poder de apretar el botón aniquilaría hasta que al que apretaba el botón, que no iba a ser tan estúpido como para autoaniquilarse. Pero estamos viviendo un tiempo no de cordura, sino de estupidez, así que puedo dudar un poco de eso, porque a uno nos manejan las pasiones, ¿no? Y lo inconsciente. La parte inconsciente, si no la analizamos, dicen nuestros estudios, estamos dejando casi la mitad de lo que interviene en una decisión.
If I could, I wouldn't mind adding something to that. And this is on maybe a different level, not in terms of philosophy so much, but more in terms of lived experience. Art Laffin is a Catholic worker from Washington, D.C. And Art has spent, I believe it's every Monday afternoon in front of the Pentagon, protesting nuclear warheads, etc. And he has a book that's based on the Gospel of Mark called "The Risk of the Cross," and it's a study of Mark's call to discipleship that he looks at through the lens of nuclear disarmament and the nuclear threat. So it's a book that doesn't look so much to say as who is the voice, but puts the question to us as to what are you doing and how are you living. But I'll put reference to it in the chat. But it's a worthwhile study, very worthwhile study.
Thank you, Paul, for the reference.
Yes, Hayley?
Yes, I just wanted to make reference to the context of landscape, being a landscape archaeologist and anthropologist of religion. Part of my speciality is sacred geography and cosmology, and I'm presently a cultural cosmology. That's a person's cosmos, their worldview. I'm presently a postgraduate in the Sophia Centre for the Study of Cosmology in Culture at University of Wales, Trinity St David in the UK. And I'm very interested in the cosmology and sacred landscape of Thomas Merton. And for example, if I just grab my copy of the Seven-Storey Mountain, for example, we can see here, you know, a good example of his Merton's cosmology, talking about mountains. So I think this, in terms of my interest in Merton, this may be the kind of path that I'm going to be going down in the near future. But I just thought it was worth raising the comment because we tend to focus on landscape as a very solid and there entity rather than perhaps think of it in an abstract way and in terms of cultural cosmology and sacred geography.
Ok, Juan. Hayley hace referencia a la manera en que la cosmología mertoniana y el paisaje pueden ser entendidos a través de una lectura de Seven Storey Mountain y los modos en que no es algo estático. Y a ella le interesa particularmente por su interés en la cosmología.
Cosmología. No, excelente. Frente a eso, es interesante ver cómo influenciaba el paisaje a Merton, ¿no? Cómo su condición de producción literaria lo ayudó a retirarse en una ermita y que era algo difícil para él, ¿no? Realmente él lo que buscaba es estar lejos para escribir. Por esa última etapa él estuvo muy enfocado en los estudios literarios. No sabemos a dónde iba a acabar Merton. eh, Después de ese tiempo, porque él venía profundamente pues haciendo todo este trabajo de religión comparada, pero también, como señalaba con Jacques Maritain, él entendía que para hablar de política y de los problemas sociales que él tanto le parecían urgentes, que debíamos ser espectadores no inocentes ni culpables, sino activos, participar en el cambio. No sé hasta dónde habría llevado a él seguir viviendo en el monasterio. Él pensaba irse, dicen en las cartas con Cardenal, que él pensaba irse a vivir a Solentiname. Ese era su pensar. Él estaba buscando ese. Primero, una relación más cercana con las personas, pero opuestamente también buscaba una soledad total en una eremita. Dos paisajes totalmente distintos. La soledad del paisaje donde él solo lo habita y otra, la gente, el contacto con la gente, que puede ser algo bastante ruidoso.
Bueno, muchas gracias, Juan Carlos.
Ustedes, a todos, gracias por escuchar.
Vamos con la última presentación de la mañana. The last presentation of this morning is by Liana, so let me introduce her first. Vamos a presentar a Liana. Primero en español, then in English. Liana Ghel es editora jefe de la editorial de la Arquidiócesis de Bucarest. Obtuvo su título en la Universidad de Bucarest, donde enseñó lingüística italiana desde 1990 hasta 2003. Y luego comunicación en el Departamento de Teología Católica de la Universidad de Bucarest desde 2008 hasta 2011. Se doctoró en filología en 2006 con una tesis sobre los verbos psicológicos y actualmente está a punto de defender su segunda tesis sobre el sentido de la historia en Vladimir Guica, Jacques Maritain y Thomas Merton. Ha publicado libros y artículos sobre ellos y el más reciente es Triptych, publicado en 2023. Liana vive en Bucarest, Rumania, con su esposo Bill y tiene 3 hijos, como nos contó más temprano. Liana Ghel works currently as editor-in-chief of the publishing house of the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Bucharest. A graduate from the Department of Romance Languages of the University of Bucharest, in a degree she got in 1987, Ghel taught Italian linguistics within the same department from 1990 to 2003, and communication with the Catholic Theology Department at the University of Bucharest from 2008 until 2011. She holds a PhD in philology with a thesis on psychological verbs obtained in 2006, and she's on the verge of defending her second thesis on the sense of history in Vladimir Guica, Jacques Maritain, and Thomas Merton. Ghel has authored a number of articles and books, the most recent being Triptych, dedicated to these 3 authors. She lives in Bucharest, Romania, with her husband Bill, and they are the proud parents of 3 grown-up children. So, welcome, Liana, to this conference.
Thank you very much, Marcela, for your presentation. Just a few words about how I got to prepare this presentation. Actually, I wrote it about 3 years ago when you first had your own study about monk's pond, having the title Frogs in One Pond, which was actually a quotation from Merton. I very much wanted to, your paper stimulated a lot of ideas in me because at that time I was working on this PhD on Thomas Merton, and I had a lot of his writings under my eyes. And actually I found that frogs were very present in some of his writings, and I just wanted, it's a small motif, but somehow it intrigued me, and I felt like I would like to look more into it. And but then there was no chance to present it 2 summers ago, not last summer, and finally we're here, and thank you very much for hosting my presentation. It will be very modest on a kind of a light-hearted tone, maybe after the heavy, serious subjects that have been discussed before. This would be maybe just before lunch, maybe it's a welcome change. I also wanted to thank my colleague who spoke before me for using the word pareciasta. Did I say it right in Spanish? Meaning somebody who speaks about things that other people would rather not mention and keep, how should I say, not take the risk of speaking out. And I think Merton's magazine, Monk's Pond, that he wanted to, that he actually published in the last year of his life, is an expression of this trait that Merton really had and which brought him a lot of trouble, being an outspoken person. So more on the frogs of the same pond. In the last 12 months of his life and already 3 decades after his religious conversion, Merton felt an inner urge to establish a literary magazine. He envisioned a deliberately minor magazine. He wanted it to have a limited circulation and a limited number of issues. And the magazine was meant to, this part of this information is, I'm sure, new to many of you, and I feel a little bit bad to go over it, but I wrote this paper mainly for the Romanian public, so please forgive me if some of the things are not new to you. So this magazine was meant to be replete with poems, essays, works, and they were all out of his vast network of friends and correspondents. And it was a family magazine, if you want to call it like that. Merton had been engaged in magazine work before. During his student years, he edited The Jester, one of Columbia University's periodicals. In addition to covering his expenses, this little occupation had provided numerous moments of satisfaction and amusement, as the young Merton shared this work with some of his best friends. And they were all students at Columbia, and you know how students are, no? But these things changed somewhat after Merton entered the Trappist monastery, Our Lady of Gethsemane, in 1941. In his first years at the monastery, Merton went through a period of relative separation from the world. It was certainly a beneficial time for spiritual regeneration. And when the time was ripe, Merton would outgrow this state of separateness. I refer to Fourth and Walnut episode, which we all know. But there are episodes along the line. Merton's last year of life, 1968, will show us a much changed Trappist monk. In fact, the Merton who plans to initiate the new magazine, Monk's Pond, is a very different person from the frail and deeply wounded young man knocked on the door of the Abbey in December 1940. Almost 3 decades after joining the Trappist order, freed from most of the complexes that youth inevitably carries with, and stimulated by the cultural fervor of the 60s, Merton feels gripped by new energies. It's a very special time for him. While animated by these inner dispositions, in October 1967, Merton meets through mutual friends a young poet, young then, Jonathan Green, born in 1943. Moved by the same energies as Merton, Green will soon become Merton's associate in editing the 4 issues of Monk's Pond. Memoir of those years recalled that Monk's Pond was an outlet for Merton's enthusiasm and for his new explorations in writing and art. And it was also a rich record of the ferment taking place within him at this time. As such, Monk's Pond was an adventure, bringing together all sorts of people who shared in the same enthusiasm and taste for artistic exploration. This was Merton's initial personal insight for the magazine. Beyond this, critics have pointed out the difficulty of finding an objective purpose for Monk's Pond, clear editorial program. In his letters to Jonathan Green, Merton himself is rather guarded about the program, saying that the purpose of the magazine is to publish a few issues dedicated to poetry and unusual prose, after which its activity would cease. This deliberately anti-programmatic statement created perplexity for many critics. Nevertheless, it proved to be realistic, because the magazine had indeed only 4 issues. The first 2 were relatively manageable, but for the next 2, the quantity of contributors, not always equaled by quality, increased dramatically. Faced with this turn, and quite caught up with the imminent Asian itinerary of 1968, Merton decided to close the series. After all, this was what he wanted to do from the very beginning. Merton motivated his termination, arguing the decision to end the activity of the magazine, arguing that the pond was full to overflowing. This statement was in fact a pun, easily traced to the name of a pond on the monastery grounds, called Monk's Pond. Merton must have seen it as a suitable title for his magazine. Monk's Pond was indeed a publication run by a monk, pooling material offered by various people who had a desire to be heard. In Marcella's study of 2022, Marcella takes the lead from this pun in order to prove that Merton's magazine did have an agenda. Professor Raggio's position is based on a programmatic statement found in the editorial of Monk's Pond first issue, signed by Merton himself. Here he says, "The contents of this issue show the nature and character of this journal and is, in fact, the first and so far the only indication of a possible program." And we must add that the first issue included contemporary poets along with Zen masters from 8th century China and many others. Being well aware of this eclectic nature of his publication, Merton feels compelled to further clarify his statement, and he says, "In this variety, however, there is a certain consonance. They are all frogs in the same pond." The purpose of my presentation is to show that the somewhat unusual motif of frogs in a pond, introduced by Merton in the first editorial of his Monk's Pond, is not something that came to him on the spur of the moment, nor is it just a pun. On the contrary, it is a motif rooted that we can trace in a subdued and discreet manner in Merton's monastic history. And maybe we can even trace it to his childhood experience, but I didn't look that far. I don't know. The question remains open. On the large grounds of Merton's monastery, there were no less than 7 ponds, some of considerable size. Frogs, too, were certainly present. Merton's book, The Sign of Jonas, of 1953, is based on a diary of his first 6 years in the monastery, and the motive of the frogs in the pond appears several times in this book. I will stop to one journal entry, which is of March 19, 1948, where the frogs are mentioned at least 3 times. And I think looking into this will help us understand better what the frogs really meant for him. This little note of March 19, 1948, I think can shine a light on the significance that Merton's imagery, that the frog motif has in Merton's imagery. For Catholics, March 19 is the feast of Saint Joseph, who is the patron of the Universal Church and is also the patron of all who labor. And precisely on this feast day, Merton is sent to the infirmary with the flu. Far from being upset, the young monk rejoices in this turn of events because it gives him an unexpected respite of tranquility and solitude. And for him, this is a real treat. He sees it as a gift bestowed on him by Saint Joseph himself, and especially so because it is also the anniversary of Merton's solemn vows, marking his definitive entry in the Trappist order. So here we have Merton quite sick in the infirmary, but very happy to be there. The day unfolds at a relaxed rhythm, which for sure he didn't have usually in his monastery program. And he has plenty of time for reading and writing. And from his diary, we understand that he takes several breaks to put down his impressions. And interestingly enough, every time Merton would write down a thought, an idea, he would also take note in an affectionate way of the frogs in the pond that are beneath his infirmary window. And I quote from him, from his notes, I spent the anniversary of my solemn vows in the infirmary, a gesture of great kindness on the part of Saint Joseph, as far as I'm starting to realize. It has all the signs of a plot arranged just to give me a bit of recollection on this day of celebration and make me very happy. It's warm, gray clouds fly, the frogs sing all day and all night. The frogs sing all day and all night. After lunch, he writes again. I've moved the table by the window and ate looking out, as the Carthusians do. The clouds flew, and the frogs sang in the green and beautiful lake. Again, we have the frogs. After dinner, it's evening now. The frogs are still singing. After the rain showers at noon, the sky cleared. All afternoon, I lay in bed, rediscovering the meaning of contemplation, rediscovering God, rediscovering myself, and the office and scripture and everything. And in the end, he closes on this note. It was one of the most wonderful days I've known in my life. So one of the most wonderful days that he had known in his life was full of frogs, to say it bluntly. In the same note, with a humorous touch, Merton opposes the frogs to some bothersome home-raised ducks. Because the ducks made constant noise, annoying the brothers, eventually the birds got sold. Compared to the loud quaking, the singing of the frogs seemed to have provided instead a pleasant background, at least for Merton. It also seems that in Merton's long-term memory, this motive of the frogs singing in a pond would be associated with the undisturbed happiness of that feast day of March 19, 1948. Seen from this angle, the frogs in a pond motif may shine a clearer light on Merton's intent for his little magazine 20 years later. Indeed, Merton wanted to establish a propitious pond in which all sorts of frogs could sing at will, each with its own verse, rhythm, and tonality. But what is the point of such an eclectic sound show? Again, the same journal notes seem to suggest that for Merton, Monk's Pond was conceived as an image of the boundless generosity of creation. a generosity which is rich in variety of forms of expression. But I think the true intention of this project, which seems to have appeared all of a sudden and for no clear reason, becomes even more obvious if, in addition to the episode of March 19, 1948, we also look at the other special moment, which was to take place 10 years later, more precisely on March 18, 1958. 10 years without a day after the happy respite in the infirmary described above, and another 10 years before the launch of Monk's Pond, so right in the middle of the two, Merton has an experience that will change his life. The date of March 18, 1958, will remain in Merton's biography as the day of his great epiphany. Commonly called 4th and Walnut, after the corner of the two streets in Louisville, Kentucky, where it took place, the event is described by Merton in his diary as, you all know it, waking up from a dream of separateness. On that day, having come on business to town, while waiting at that crowded street corner, suddenly all the strangers who passed by seemed to Merton as bright as the sun. He felt overwhelmed with an immense love and compassion for these people. But he also felt an intense desire to help all these people see how beautiful they really were. And this is where I think Monk Pond connects right with 4th and Walnut. This short but powerful experience would mark the beginning of the monks' reopening to the world, to people, and an opening that was coming not from the self-centered and unbridled man that Merton was in his youth, but from the priest, the spiritual mentor, and the mature, yet still very creative companion that Merton wanted to be. Merton's return to, and the monk people, will have at least two concrete consequences. First of all, and perhaps the most visible consequence, was the fact that Merton's correspondence with other people would grow exponentially, both in terms of the number of letters and in terms of the number of people he would write to back and forth. In the study cited above, Marcella observes that by 1968, Merton had been interacting for 10 years with intellectuals, writers, and activists from Latin America, the United States, and Europe alike. And we could also add some people from Asia. Pointing out to this 10-year interval, Marcella places the epiphany of 4th and Walnut at the beginning of what I consider to be Merton's new vocation, his adult vocation. It is a vocation that I call the vocation to relationship. In fact, many studies on Merton underline the idea that 4th and Walnut marks a new stage. From now on, being present to and among people is perceived by Merton as his vocation. This openness to people, ensued from the Louisville revelation, is confirmed, among many others, by one critic, Lawrence S. Cunningham, precisely in the context of a commentary to the Monk's Pond magazine. He says that Monk's Pond was in continuity with Merton's epistolary conversations, which he had with various like-minded friends. He also loved small visits of persons who were deeply interested in the spiritual life. He entertained ecumenical gatherings, and he had a deep trust that beneath the difference of opinion, philosophies, and religious beliefs, there was something truly monastic about true seekers, after truth and justice. So Merton believed that there was a way to find truth and justice across philosophies, across all sorts of opinions and religious beliefs. I think this belief is clearly shown also in his desire to have a magazine, a very eclectic one, which will happen 10 years later. I will shorten it a little bit. Marcella also notes in her own study on Marx Band, that Merton was not selective or elitist in cultivating relationships, and that actually what he wanted was to give a voice to people who otherwise would not have a voice. In this slide, the image of the frogs in the pond may be seen as a symbol of Merton's vocation to relationship and to helping other people to make themselves heard. Like all vocations, this one too is ordained for the kingdom, and as such, it will give rise to concrete projects oriented towards helping the brothers and sisters in the kingdom grow and be themselves. More precisely, it will lead to several initiatives connecting to collective editorial projects where all could be heard. And this is my second point that I would like to make in this presentation. Merton's idea of collective work was not necessarily the one that we all know from 1963, Emblems for a Season of Fury, but studying his correspondence with Jacques Maritain, I found another project which never happened, but which he very much had at heart and for which he had asked Maritain's advice. We can trace this project back to a letter of April 1960, when Merton writes to his friend Jacques Maritain, asking his advice on a very important issue. These are his exact words. He speaks about his plan of putting together a collective study dedicated to the theme of contemplation as a return to paradise. And for this volume, he thinks Merton intends to enlist the participation of a few distinguished contributors from different areas. He thinks of the Zen master Suzuki. He thinks of the Jewish sociologist and psychologist Erich Fromm. And he also thinks of the Protestant theologian Paul Tillich. But his superiors have some doubts about the opportunity of the project, and therefore Merton writes to his friend Maritain, and it's very interesting that he writes this letter in French. Usually they would write to each other, each in his mother tongue. Merton would write in English, Maritain would write in French. But this letter is written in French, and it's written at a moment when Merton's superior was away for a meeting, a general meeting of the superiors in Europe. And he intends to write the same letter, to send the same letter to the general superior of the Trappist order. So he says all this in his letter to Maritain, and he says, what do you think? Is this a good idea? My superior doesn't think so. What should I do? The main concern of the superior and the censors of the order was that Merton might have been accused of syncretism, religious syncretism, and eclecticism, and that all religions are equal. And anyway, but the same superiors were willing to support separate articles published in several issues of some magazine, where each of these people would in turn say what they have to say about contemplation as a return to paradise. Merton justifies his desire to have a collective volume as a way of fostering dialogue, a dialogue that could do some good among the intellectuals. And knowing that Maritain would also support such a project, Merton kind of invites Merton, Jacques and Raisa, both the Merton husbands, to be part of the project if they think they have the time to do it. 10 days later, Jacques Maritain answers from his residence at Princeton, but surprise, he displays the same guarded opinion as Merton's superiors. He says the dialogue is a good idea and it's much needed, but caution is recommended because there are always accidental dangers, he says, and misunderstandings should be avoided. However, continues Maritain, the project may be feasible, could be done, provided that Merton assumes the main lead as host, writing the preface and setting the tone for the discussion. Merton welcomes the idea of inviting Suzuki and Fromm, and he also suggests Mircea Eliade, who is a Romanian historian of religion, and George Vaida, who is a Hungarian specialist in Oriental religions. However, as we learned from Merton's subsequent letter, Merton would answer Maritain pretty soon, thanking him and saying all the ideas were good, but the project will not go through because the Abbot General had decided that such a hybrid volume was too risky of an idea. But the idea will stay with Merton. He still feels that the collective project is really necessary, and 3 years later, as we know, we'll have a collection of poetry, emblems for a season of fury, which brings together poets from multiple countries and languages, and Raisa Maritain is also present with some poems translated by Merton himself. In a letter to Jacques Maritain, Merton described the project, the idea of the project, while it was not yet published. He defines it as a collection of poems about the world today. So Merton was interested in how poets see the world, his world in his days. I have stopped in detail about, I gave all these details because I think they help us understand better the Monk's Pond project. And they clearly show they display the same program that Marcella has already pointed out, has already identified in her article, and for the magazine Monk's Pond. The program underlined by Marcella was a three-folded program. The magazine was meant to be a collective work, to be a transnational journal, and it was meant to show intellectual networks in action. It was both a program and a strategy. But the strategy for what? Merton himself declares in the first editorial, in the editorial of the first issue, that it's a magazine that actually really doesn't have any program. But in an intuitive way and in an underground way, Merton follows the same thread as in Emblems for a Season of Fury. He wants to listen to what people have to say about the world today, and he wants to be able to give voice to some people who would otherwise would not have a place in the mainstream cultural models. To this goal, Merton had already collaborated in the past with various publications, but now he decides to open his own forum. So he calls all his friends and the friends of his friends, and they all send out contributions for his magazine. The result is a polyphonic one, maybe not a very dissonant one, because it reflects indeed a perspective that is not necessarily the one of the great voices of the time. Rather, it's the often humble, marginal position of poets who are not consecrated artists, that are somewhat incoherent, but they are all keen on the search for meaning. And we can sense here in this idea of Merton's magazine a desire to offer an alternative image of what was going on in his time. It's a simple image, but an authentic image. And given that it is a close-up, it's a very, these voices are, by talking to all these people, Merton places himself very close to them. This closeness cannot be conveyed in any other way but by a multi-voice discourse, a polyphonic discourse. This is the context that will help us understand why it mattered little for Merton if the end result was a polyphony, quite similar to the sound of frogs singing in a pond. Merton certainly kept in mind that most wonderful day of his life back in March 1948, and he wanted to associate all these people to the beauty of that experience. And I think the title that he has chosen gives us a key into the fact that Merton wanted to create a place where all frogs could be heard and seen as beautiful and worthy of love people, brothers and sisters. That would be, yeah, I'm not sure I made myself very clear, but that would be what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Liana. Yes, it was very, very clear. And I think that, well, it provides this idea that I always think about when reflecting upon Merton, of these coincidences, like these dates that you have spotted 10 years apart and then another 10 years. It always amazes me how these small details are so, I don't know, so central in anything related to Merton. I don't know if there are more questions, comments.
One thing that occurred to me in the course of the talk about contemplation as a return to paradise, there's that wonderful piece of prose in the opening section of The Night Spirit and the Dawn Air
Good morning, Thomas Merton, Centre Paul Pearson speaking.
Hi, Paul. Where Merton starts with the sound of a frog going om, which is, or no, the sound of the frog. He says the frog is in samadhi, which is a deep sort of concentrated state of meditation, and ends that section talking about paradise all around. Paradise is all around. The gate of heaven is open. So I just thought of that when Liana was speaking about the sound of the frog and the meditation and paradise all being connected up in that. Except in that piece, there's no people around, just creatures.
Yes, I didn't have enough time to speak about contemplation, but certainly that is a very powerful theme. And well, it will have to stay for another time.
Yes, as a way of thanking you, I would like to share, and also as a link to what Paul has just said, I would like to read a poem by Basho, and I think Thomas Merton was familiar with the Japanese poet, and the poem reads, "Old pond, a frog jumps in, the sound of water." Thank you. Thanks very much.
That's a haiku.
Yes.
Yes. We should have to have it under our eyes to, in Japanese preferably.
I'll send it on the chat. I'll copy it on the chat.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Liana. Yes, Dominic?
Yeah, what I also was thinking about Monk's Pond is that Merton was also always an educator, so he saw that maybe that these people could publish in Monk's Pond part of a process of going back to the paradise. And the going back to the paradise from a theological perspective is also an eschatological perspective. So it's something that we cannot achieve in this life. So we are all in a kind of still jumping in in the pond. But I think it's intriguing that he let go of this idea of perfection or the high tops of contemplation, but that he and this has reminded me of the talk that also what I did about Evagrius, who talks about natural contemplation. And this is where he situates also poets and also the Shaker community, and in the simplicity of going back to the paradise. You don't always have to be a mystic like John of the Cross, but we are all somehow. So it's also making it available to all of us to go this path, and not only to exceptional figures who we respect, but of whom we think we can never achieve such a thing. So I think as an educator, he invited everybody to deepen our lives and go to go that path. So I liked also what you said, that it was not just to elites that he wanted to reach out when he was doing this project. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Dominic. I must say that your speech yesterday, I found a lot of common ideas with what I wanted to say, and also possible leads for further developing this. I think when Merton was in the infirmary on that day of March 1948, he was still very young and new in his contemplation path, because the frogs were enough for him to make him happy and to feel like he was contemplating. And I don't say that this is not a way to enter contemplation, on the contrary, but he was not yet in the dark night of contemplation, which is a little above. No? And I think by the end of his life, by 1968, he had gone a long way from that happy day of March 19, 1948. I think all these people that came in his way, that he met through letters or through visits, all these people were speaking to him, and he contemplated something in each meeting. There was food for contemplation for him. And I think at a certain point he might have been overwhelmed, and maybe that was exactly why he wanted to have this magazine. It was some kind of I don't know, when your house becomes very full, and then you build a garage and you move some of the stuff there.
Marce,
Cristóbal y después Juan.
ok.
Yes. So thank you again for your wonderful presentation as well. And yes, again, reading from The Hidden Ground of Love, he actually talks about it. He said why he was interested in Monk's Pond, because he said at the end of, he was looking at almost at the last stages of his life. Actually, I will not be surprised, because he said many times that he was thinking constantly about his own death. And he saw it very closely, I think. He was meditating on death frequently just to live more fully his life in case that he doesn't come back from Asia. And he wrote about it to many correspondents. And one of the things that he said is that he wanted to be more creative with his time. He didn't want to be so, this is why he disliked books that he wrote earlier in his life, especially the one about the ascent to truth. He said that it was one of the worst books that he ever read, because, of course, it was more scholastic, more, I guess, more Thomist, academic, and less creative in that spirit of innovation and playing with words and being more in tune with the rhythms of life. So he provided his own answers. If you read some of these letters in The Hidden Ground of Love, actually, he gives you the answers.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. I didn't read that book. Thank you.
No problem.
Juan.
Ok, Marcela, uno de los puntos que yo me pregunto fuera de los especialistas que conocen a Merton se conoce en el mundo más como un maestro espiritual, pero creo que su aporte, quería preguntarle, dado que ella trabaja ese tema sobre esa intención de Merton de trabajar colaborativamente con otros escritores de su tiempo y era como una urgencia para él. ¿Cuál sería la mejor forma de divulgar eso, si cree que es pertinente divulgar esa figura de Merton? También como otra faceta, ¿no? De él, ya que la faceta de maestro espiritual pues ha sido la más conocida porque la otra era muy polémica. Entonces quería preguntarle si hay alguna vía que ella piense si valdría la pena también.
Si valdría la pena mostrar su faceta colaborativa.
De crítico literario,
Okay.
sí,
Okay.
más que monje espiritual.
Okay. Liana, what Juan wants to know is, from your perspective, considering that Merton is known worldwide as a mystic master, whether this other facet of a literary critic would be or could be spread around the world just as that of the mystic master, and in what way would that be possible? How would it be best to make people aware that Merton was also a literary critic?
That's a very good question, and I do think it's a very good theme to explore. I don't know enough to speak about how Merton, well, I just haven't read enough Merton to give a full good answer about it. But what I can say is that this PhD that I'm now trying to finish is based on the letters that Merton and Maritain exchanged, and which the Thomas Merton Certain at Bellarmine University offered me very generously to study. They are not published yet. Some of them are. Some of Merton's letters to Maritain are published, but not all. And then Maritain's letters to Merton, as far as I know, have never been published. But there are about 100 letters, and in them, the two, Merton and Maritain, constantly speak about books that they have read. Constantly. Every letter is a little piece of literary criticism. And they are a joy to read. They have such fresh insights, and they speak like a friend to one friend to another. So no pretensions, no big words, very direct. And I'm doing a PhD on the sense of history, whatever can be traced in these letters about how they felt about history. But I think very well another research could be done on how they discuss the writings of other people, how they interact with what they read. And this would be one possibility. I think there are all sorts of ways to do that, but it's really something that's worth doing.
Maybe I can share a little bit of my experience. I have been living in Belgium and in Germany, and what I did in Germany, since I discussed Merton, is to refer to German authors that Merton was aware of or in contact with, and start from there. And so wherever we live around the world, you can almost expect that Merton had some contact there, or there was an author that he read, or and it makes Merton more interesting, in my experience, also for German listeners. I was doing a podcast series, and I was making some references. Merton was reading Goethe while he was a student in Colombia, and then I could understand, the Germans, they are interested in that. What did he do with that? And then he picked it up later in some conversation with Victor Hammer and his wife, who made it when he did a translation of one of the poems of Goethe. And then I could move on to Austria and Victor Hammer, and then from Austria I could move to Jacques Maritain in France, and then you get a kind of European network in which Merton was involved. And I noticed that the public, when I was giving talks in Germany on Merton, that the public liked that, because then they had like a starting point, a reference from their own cultural backgrounds, and then I could add something new. And the new thing was that Merton didn't stop in Europe. He broadened his perspective. He was a global player. And this is then where I want to take the people, the public, then the European German public, to invite them to look at spirituality, Christian life from a global perspective. But I take them from the perspective that they know. And then I move on, because this is what Merton invites us to do. Not to stop just with our own culture, but to see things from a broader perspective.
¿Te hace falta traducción, Juan? ¿O entendiste?
Está bien. Entiendo también que el trabajo de publicar, así como lo hizo Argentina en su época, va a ser muy valioso para la lectura de Merton, promover la lectura a través de la edición. Y pues que ahora tenemos los medios digitales, que también es una ventaja, ¿no?
Okay, Juan says that it would be, or it will be important to translate and publish Merton's works into other languages, just as it was done here in Argentina many decades ago already.
Actually, yeah, we did publish the Seven-Story Mountain and the Sign of Janus. We did that for his anniversary in 2015. And already this year, we're working on the second edition of the Seven-Story Mountain, which would be a revised edition. And some other publishing houses published other things. I can't remember right now very well what they were. I think the Zen Masters and the Birds of Appetite was published, translated. And there was an interest in, but I never had the time to follow up with this, in starting a Merton chapter. I found 2 or 3 people who would have liked to do that, but I didn't have time to do it yet.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you, Liana, and thank you all for this wonderful conversation. Vamos a terminar la sesión de la mañana. So we'll finish this morning session. We'll meet again in 1.5 hours, okay? That would be 2 p.m. here in Argentina. So in 1.5 hours, we'll meet again. We have still like 3 or 4 presentations and the closing table of poets. So I'll see you in a little while.
Okay. Gracias.
Gracias.